Ross Tucker. He joins us every single Wednesday at this time. We love having Ross on the program, of course, with CBS Sports and the Ross Report and the Ross Tucker Football Podcast and all that good stuff. Mr. Ross Tucker. Ross, good morning, pal.
Good morning. How are you guys?
I mean, pretty good. The Eagles offseason said it had been a little strange, a little slow in the go on the coordinator search. I mean, Ross, I made the point earlier. Part of what I think has dismayed people is, and I'm not saying it's always going to be this simple, but you prefer it to be this simple. Here's who I like. Here's who I want. I go get him. And, this has been whatever the hell's the opposite of that. That's what this has been.
The problem is when they don't want us.
I mean, Ross, it's really been odd. What do you make of it so far? 2.5 weeks in.
Well, it's funny because on some level it reminds me of the draft when everybody has it in their head what position they want their team to take. And then they read the mock drafts and they see the guys that go higher in the mock drafts. And as long as they take a guy that they thought was going to go higher at the position they wanted, they're happy. A couple thoughts. Do I think that the Eagles were really high on Mike McDaniel and Brian Daboll? Yeah. Am I surprised those guys potentially picked other places? No. These guys are not dumb. They know that perception is reality. The Chargers haven't won a playoff game in forever. There's no fan base, and the media is very, very, very forgiving.
Man, Ross, I've been making this point, and everyone kills me for it. Go ahead.
So if you're Mike McDaniel and you go to the Chargers, I mean, you're living in Southern California. Which by the way, his wife's from California. There's not that much pressure. And if you win a playoff game, you have accomplished more than they have in years. And you will get a lot of credit for it because they hadn't won a playoff game until you got there. Brian Daboll, probably wants to try to be a head coach again. Do you have a better chance to be a head coach if you go to Tennessee, where they are terrible and they have been for years, and they have a young quarterback, and they go from winning 3 or 4 games like they do every year to winning 9 or 10, and Brian Daboll gets all the credit. Wow, look at the second-year leap that number 1 pick Cam Ward made. Because usually the teams looking for head coaches are bad, and they're drafting quarterbacks high, and even Tennessee is a lot easier on a coordinator, and both those guys feel confident that they'll get multiple years to show what they can do in those cities if it's necessary. In Philadelphia, it's probably on some level of disappointment if you don't get to at least the conference championship game. These guys are not dumb. They look at entry point. Why do you think Bill Parcells always went to a team that won 2 or 3 games the year before? Because he knew it's not that hard to make a few different moves and get them to at least be competitive and win 8 games, maybe 9, and everybody says you're a genius coach. So I absolutely think that's part of it. Now, for some of these guys that are withdrawing their name, that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, 95% of the time, when a guy withdraws their name, it's because they know they're not getting it. They're not getting a
Is that a power move, Ross? Is that I don't want to be told no? I don't want to be dumped by the girl, therefore I dump you?
Yes.
Is that what that is?
I won't say power move, but it's it's a save face move. It's something
that's what I mean, save face.
It's something their agents tell them to do. It's hey, you're not going to get this because they're interviewing that Mannion guy a second time. They didn't ask you for a second interview yet. We should announce that you're withdrawing your name. I mean, give me a break. If they didn't want the job, those guys wouldn't have interviewed in the first place, okay? And let me say something else, too.
Sure.
These are 2 important notes. Number 1, the Eagles intentionally hire people from outside the sport of football. For example, like Adam Berry, Andrew Berry's brother, came from Goldman Sachs. They are very well aware that in any other industry, if you are struggling in an aspect of your business and you bring in consultants to tell you what's wrong and how you can fix it, that costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles have had 17 interviews so far. They are getting free consulting sessions where they're saying, what are you seeing from us? What are we doing wrong? What would you do? They're getting a lot of value.
Information gathering.
And then the last thing is, and people don't really want to hear this, but the reality is it doesn't matter who they don't get. It only matters who they ultimately get and how that person does.
Well,
when is that going to be?
But, Ross, as long as they don't get the 11th person because they wanted 3 weeks of information gathering.
I feel like...
Hold a second. How high do you think Peterson was on their list? And in every ranking in 2016, Doug Peterson was listed as the worst hire. Nick Sirianni, I believe, was the last head coach hired that year in 2021, and most people had him down as the worst candidate hired. I don't even know if Sirianni interviewed anywhere else.
I don't think he did.
And then it's not like people thought Steichen was going to be the greatest offensive coordinator ever, or Gannon the greatest defensive coordinator. Kellen Moore, 2 years ago, I was on this show with you guys, and you're like, well, the Cowboys fired him, and he didn't do that great with the Chargers last year. They didn't want him back. You know what the truth is? Nobody knows. Nobody knows which of these coaches are going to do a good job, which of them aren't, especially for the people that are unknown. And I will say this. I know people want them to hire somebody. Their track record of hiring coaches from the outside, not promoting from within, hiring coaches from the outside, is as good as I'm aware of in pro sports.
Yeah, they've been on a heater there.
Who do you feel, are there names that you feel like they are close to, or names that we should be considering as hey, these are good guys that would serve this team well as an offensive coordinator?
So I think it's interesting that they want to have a second interview now in person with Sean Mannion, who just retired from playing 2 years ago. And so I think this is like, at this point, what we all have to ask ourselves is, would you rather them get a young, unproven guy who maybe hasn't called plays before, but that
Mannion has
really,
not, correct? We're talking about...
He's only coached 2 years.
LaFleur.
Right,
yeah, he's only coached 2 years.
Exactly.
So, but that's okay. Everybody loves this Davis Webb guy. He's only been coaching 3 or 4 years. The Eagles just requested to interview with him. He's been getting head coach interviews. Everybody loves Grant Yudinsky.
Well, I don't necessarily love these guys. I would prefer a guy who's called plays. Like, who are those guys?
All right. So then you're looking more at like Mike Kafka, even though he took that Lions job. I'm a little bit confused by that one. Matt Nagy, who called the plays when he was the head coach with the Bears. Josh Grizzard, who everybody was raving about the first half of the year last year for the Bucs. And then all of a sudden Baker Mayfield started playing like crap, and Grizzard got fired after a year. So essentially the options here now, and we all have to decide what we want. Would you rather go with the guy that hasn't done it before, but that the Eagles are obviously excited about and seems very promising, or a guy with experience that is not as highly sought after potentially, like a Nagy or a Grizzard, etc.? That's the options right now.
Grizzard has called plays in Tampa
last year,
correct?
For the Bucs.
Yes.
Yeah, last year for the Bucs.
Okay.
Really smart kid. Yale kid.
I love that.
I've known him for years.
I love that he's called plays. I love that he's done it at a high level with Baker. It feels like, I don't know.
Well, not that high level.
I don't love any of these choices that we're down to. It feels like now that it's been over 2 weeks, it's problematic no matter how you cut it. But this Grizzard guy, he's got some of the things that we're looking for, and that's exciting. It doesn't feel like there are a lot of guys out there who have these prerequisite, has called
your
plays,
prerequisite
is an offensive mind who's had some success. Right.
Yeah, I mean, Ross, I guess I look at this a little different than John. Here's my thing. And because I don't pretend to say I know the ins and outs of all 27,000 frickin' candidates' names we've heard.
Right.
But I know this from a common sense standpoint. There's someone available who's going to be a future NFL Hall of Fame coach. Hall of Famer. Now, he's only going to make the Hall of Fame because he becomes a head coach and has success. But there's someone who's going to be a Hall of Fame coach you can get right now. You got to find the right guy. I don't give a damn if he's called plays, not called plays. I just know this. There's always a couple guys available. They're going to have spectacular careers. And it's Lurie, Howie, and Nick's job to freaking find him, identify him, hire him.
But you know how hard it is to identify whether a guy's good at calling plays if he hasn't called plays before?
It makes it harder, but it's also about concepts. I've always said I think it's more about play design than play calling.
I think it's
about
tough.
both.
I think. Well, let me say a couple things. This is important. I was on sideline on Sunday for the Rams and the Seahawks, and man, those coaches are impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of times that Smith and Jigba is like lined up in the backfield and then all of a sudden he's wide open, or how many times do you see like on a crossing route, Puka Nacua, there's nobody within 5 yards of him.
Well,
he's like the best
that?
receiver in the NFL. I do think there's some truth to what you're saying, Joe, about the play calling's part of it, but part of it is what they're doing pre-snap and the things they're doing, where they're lining these up, how they're moving these guys around to get them wide open. I got to be honest with you, though, I would be surprised if they brought somebody in here who's never called plays before. That feels like a major risk, and you're putting someone in a big-time pressure cooker. I think it's more likely that they would bring someone in that's called plays before and give that person a second chance here in Philly.
All right, well, look, all of this on the table, the whole OC situation feels like the never-ending topic.